This is your boy Juice, and we are back with another one. As you can see, things are still heating up out in California. The LA protests, which have turned to what they could call riots. Here today, we have all the updates. Senator getting pulled out of a conference. We have looters. We have looting starting, and Trump saying that he's sending in the Marines on Thursday.
As we await the arrival of those 700 Marines, California's top leaders are going to court to block what they call Trump's unlawful militarization of Los Angeles. A hearing is actually set for this afternoon on California's emergency request to block the administration from expanding the mission of the Marines and California's National Guard. DOJ lawyers calling the lawsuit a crass political stunt.
So right now we're going to jump into what actually happened at that conference and see how the actions of the new state is utilizing its power against even its own representatives.
Senator Alex Padilla, I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
How many of our ICE agents have been doxxed for doing their duty?
What the world?
How they have been targeted?
Senator.
And that is a U.S. senator. Does that mean that there is no one else safe from the Trump regime? And we're going to jump back into what the news reporters are saying that was initially supposed to happen at this conference.
My next guest will be in that courtroom arguing for the state of California. Joining me now, California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Rob, good to see you again. The last time we talked was during the wildfires. Now you are dealing with this. You are getting ready to go to court this afternoon. Give me a preview. What will you argue? How will you argue?
Well, great to see you again, and thank you for having me. We have a hearing afternoon at 1:30 p.m. in San Francisco in the federal courthouse, and we'll be making the case we've been making since day one, since we filed our complaint on Monday and our temporary restraining order request on Tuesday. We argue that the president is engaged in an unlawful power grab, that he's trying to exercise authority that he doesn't have, that the commander-in-chief for the National Guard, the California National Guard, under these circumstances is Gavin Newsom. And there was no authority or statute that triggers the president to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles. So we argue that his deployment of the National Guard to LA is unlawful and thus invalid. We also argue that the Marines, of course, as a military entity, are subject to the Posse Comitatus Act and cannot engage as a military entity in civilian law enforcement and must be restricted so that they're not involved in civilian law enforcement. So we think we have the better of the facts and the law. We've seen the opposition filed by the federal government, and we think we'll prevail today.
What happens if the court doesn't agree with you today, Rob?
Our case continues. Today's request for a temporary restraining order. So all the arguments on our complaint continue. We might be able to seek a preliminary injunction or seek an order at the end of the.
Are they saying they're about to get a restraining order on the military? Can we do that? We can get a restraining order on the military? I would love to hear some legal counsel if they was any facts on can we get a restraining order from the military?
The litigation. So today is one step along the way, but we do believe, as we have in a supermajority of the 25 cases that we brought against the Trump administration, we believe we'll prevail and secure the order that we're seeking.
Bear with me for a minute, Rob. I want to give a little historical perspective here. The other time, last time in history, that the president deployed the National Guard against the wishes of the governor of a state was 1965. President Johnson deployed the National Guard as well as active duty military to Alabama to enforce desegregation, citing the, quote, likelihood of domestic violence and obstruction of the execution and enforcement of federal laws, end quote. President Trump says that these protesters are obstructing federal law enforcement and committing violence.
There's no precedent for what the Trump administration is trying to do here. The example that you cite is based on a different law entirely, and the concern was about the deprivation of rights to those who were peacefully protesting, and the civil rights not being enforced, that they had protections for, and that attached to them. Here, the citation that the president refers to is 10 USC 12406 to authorize purportedly his deployment of the National Guard to Los Angeles. And it requires one of three things: an invasion. There is absolutely no invasion. No one can credibly say that. A rebellion? There's no rebellion either. No one can credibly say that. Or the inability of the federal government to execute the laws of the United States. That doesn't exist either. And even if you have one of those elements which do not exist, you also have to have the cooperation or consent of the governor of the state, Governor Gavin Newsom. He has strenuously objected to the National Guard coming in. So if you just look at the plain, unambiguous language in black and white in the...
So you have the governor and senators alike going against what Trump is trying to do over in California. But as he's saying, it was a peaceful protest, and it seems like that during the day. But then, you know, the problem with having a large group of people being involved in anything is that you can't control the actions of everybody. So in response to that, you know, there is a lot of things that aren't so great, and we're going to get into it now. So as we can see, just last evening, fell through the window. His face is on the video. I don't even understand what's the point of it. The real problem I'm seeing is these people are doing this without a care. Their face is out, and they're just going up in there taking whatever. Not really caring. But, I mean, guys, as today is Thursday, I want to see about the deployment of the troops.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
What do you guys think about what is about to go down? With all of those troops we just saw, how do you feel about the future of what's going on in California? It's seeming like the beginning of a revolution, at least in my eyes. If you see all these people trying to speak out against what's happening and the voices not being heard, it's seeming like something might shift in our whole atmosphere. But as always, my good people, I want you to live as long as you want, never want as long as you live, and always squeeze the best juice out of life. Peace.